Maintaining homeostasis for a cell is hard work. It's got to pump things in and out and move things around. And in order to do that, the cell needs to have energy. So we're going to talk about where a cell gets its energy and how different cells get energy in different ways. And in addition to that, we're going to talk about one of my favorite molecules. It's ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Now that sounds all complicated and crazy, but ATP is like the universal energy currency inside of the cell. That means that if there was a battery that you could plug into any cell phone, any remote control, anything on this planet, and it would make it run, then it could be discharged and then recharged again and then used over and over and over again, and you could move it from your cell phone to your remote control. That would be ATP. ATP is a battery that's accepted anywhere in the cell, and it can be used, and then when it's all used up, it can be recharged over and over again, endlessly. ATP consists of a 5-carbon sugar called ribose, an adenine group, and 3 phosphate groups. Notice that those 3 phosphate groups hang off to the side. In class, I'll sometimes draw the ribose as a little house and the adenine sticking off like a flag. It just tells you which house it is. Then the 3 phosphate groups are like a chimney with 3 puffs of smoke coming out. The energy is between the 2nd and the 3rd phosphate group. And that's where all the excitement happens. When a part of the cell needs energy, ATP comes in, it knocks off its last phosphate group, and that is used to run whatever it is that the cell needs to do. But then we're left with an ADP, an adenosine diphosphate, which means it has 2 phosphate groups, and it's in its uncharged form. The ADP then needs to go and get recharged, typically by the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell. Now you know why it's called that. So the ADP goes to the mitochondria, an extra phosphate is put back on it, and then it's charged up and ready to go help the cell do more work. Here's the thing. I think of that phosphate group is like a ball in one of those guns that you had when you were a kid, and you took the gun and you pushed the ball against a spring, right? And you had it push really hard until it clicked in. And then when you pulled the trigger, the spring was released and the ball shot out. That's kind of like ATP. Now that ball shooting out, it could break glass, hit your friend in the face. It could do all sorts of things. Or if you planned it really strategically, it could pull a lever, or it could open a door. That's how the phosphate group in ATP works. But once it's released, now that gun just isn't able to do anything, right? So you've got to add the phosphate group or push the ball back into the gun, tighten up that spring, that stored energy, before it's ready to do more work. We call energy that's stored in ATP chemical energy, or in this case biochemical energy. And that chemical energy is just a type of stored energy. It can be released, and then when you build those chemicals back up, it can be stored again. Biochemical energy is used by the cell to do everything it needs to, which requires energy. Endocytosis, exocytosis, running the protein pumps, movement, moving things from one part of the cell to another. That energy is used everywhere. The 2 major types of energy conformations that we'll be studying are cellular respiration and photosynthesis. Photosynthesis harnesses sunlight and then stores it as chemical energy in the form of sugar. So sugar has stored energy in its bonds just like ATP has stored energy in its bonds. But sugar isn't accepted everywhere. So sugar needs to be broken down by the process of cellular respiration in order for it to be turned into ATP, which is accepted everywhere. It's kind of like the mitochondria burns the sugar in a combustion engine, which runs a generator that's used to charge let's say your batteries, or in this case, the burned sugar is used to charge our cell batteries, also known as ATP. So in cellular respiration, sugar is broken down and energy is released. In photosynthesis, sunlight is trapped to make the sugar that will later be burned to charge the ATP. Let's start at the beginning. The next lesson is going to be on the process of photosynthesis and how sunlight is captured to form the sugar, which can be stored and burned later to recharge that ATP battery.